This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Bud, here with co-host Mikey, and we have an additional guest today, Eric Kiser from fintech. Eric, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing great, Bud. Really happy to be here with you guys.
Well, thanks for joining Mike and I today. I wanted to kind of do a brief introduction. The plan today, it's a little bit different, where we're going to kind of talk about high-level overview of what fintech is and what EFT payments are and what they mean to the beer industry. We've got a couple of fun things that Eric and I have in the background around some Michigan stuff that we did for 100% EFT that we thought it might make sense to share with you as our listeners. But before we get that far, Eric, how about you introduce yourself and what you do at fintech, but also you cut your teeth as a distributor rep, like with a distributor in, I think, Georgia and Atlanta area. So Introduce yourself to the listeners, my man.
No, thanks, Bud. So again, Eric Kiser, I'm with fintech. I'm the VP of Distributor Strategy here. I have been with fintech for almost 6 years, which is hard to believe. What's even more hard to believe is that I've been in the alcohol industry for 33 years, which is absolutely insane to say that. So as many years as you are old, Bud. I'm born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. So I'm a Midwest guy. And of all things, I started in the industry with Johnson Brothers of Des Moines, and started out as a slinging wine and going through the Gallo boot camp. It was a grocery territory rep, and did that for a couple of years. But yeah, I walked into accounts at 4:00 on a Friday afternoon and looked at 3 pallets of wine I had to work to the shelves. So I can relate to distributors. Moved up to sales manager after 5 years. It was just a great experience, and an opportunity with Heineken opened up, and took over as a distributor manager. So I was managing Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota, and I affectionately called them the Third World. Affectionately.
Corn.
About a year later, they moved me down to Texas. Yeah, I got into regional and national accounts, and then I was in Atlanta, for 10 years, around the Mid-South zone. The Carolinas, Bama, and Georgia, managing a team of about 20 and managing about 60 distributors. But yeah, but it's I think when you start on the distributor side, and obviously we've seen a lot of people that come into this business that don't have any distributor experience.
Yep.
And you can see the difference. But I'm so lucky. I mean, we all are so lucky to be in this business, and had a great run at Heineken, both managing the region and managing national accounts. And after 22 years, it was time to go, and it worked out great. Couldn't have been better. And somehow, it is who you know in this business. But a friend of mine, I won't go into the rabbit hole, but a friend of mine who coached my daughter in basketball 15 years ago in Atlanta is the chief revenue officer at fintech. And he said, hey, we got a lot of smart people here, but nobody really knows the 3-tier system. I'm like, I do. And here we are. So
that's awesome.
It's been a great run. I'm an old beer guy, and now and when I start talking tech stuff with my old beer friends, they're like, dude, just chill out a little bit. We don't, you're too smart, which I'm not.
Now, when you were a wine rep, did you, Mike and I may or may not have made fun of some wine reps along our way. Yeah. Did you in fact carry a duster in your car?
Or your pocket?
Oh, Mikey, you're right. My back pocket. I did. Yeah.
There it is. Yes.
When the Gallo survey came through, if you had dust on your E.J. Gallo White Zin or your Boone's Farm Country Quencher, dude, you were in trouble.
Well, the White Zin, you'd have it, but dust on it for sure, because nobody buys that shit.
Trust me. I mean, this again shows my age, but I used to sell the hell out of Bartles and James. So. Yes, I know, but look, I know what you mean. I used to. There were some wine sniffing.
We're just people. Grinding you a little bit, Eric. We sold wine for like a hot minute. We sold wine for like 5 or 6 years, Mikey, maybe a couple $100,000 annually. We were no big deal, but I knew we were in trouble on day one when we get our first order, and we were doing table wine like I looked at it as this would be a way to grab some additional cash flow and efficiencies to our on-premise. If we could sell table wine and all the beer, that'd just be a win for us. To be a double loss for our competitor, because they wouldn't be serviced and their gross profit per drop would go down. And I knew we were in trouble when Russ walks in. He's like, "Bud, where you want me to put the Merlot?" And I said, "Right next to the Cabernet Sauvignon."
Right next to the peanut.
Yes, the Pinot Noir, Russell.
Yeah. Then your dad walked into the sales meeting with dusters for all the sales reps, and they were like hot pink or something like that. The whole room just went upside down.
Yeah. No,
Not a great start. Not a great start.
Yeah. No, it was fun though, and yeah, you learned a lot, and my it was perfect for my mentality and my DNA to be, to go through that stuff. And I still know the Gallo 10 shelf standards. I still know the 5 display standards. It's just it's in. I have a tattoo of, the Gallo 10 steps to a sales call. So anyway,
That's awesome. I love it. Well, let's get started on, I want to talk about like kind of what EFT is. And if we make it through the whole podcast without me saying ETF, it would be incredible, as the dyslexic that I am. So
Okay.
not to be confused with electronically traded fund. What is an EFT, which is an electronic funds transfer? And how does fintech work in the beverage alcohol industry? Because you're very unique. You're one of the few businesses in the world that actually specifically service beverage alcohol.
Correct. Yeah. So EFT, the technical term, transactions that move funds between different financial institutions, bank accounts, or individuals. And really, the way it works in the beer industry is, simply put, fintech, we move payments from a retailer's bank account, to the distributor's bank account, and the other way as well. So credits go back as well. We do not take title of the money. That's a little misnomer out there. We actually, the money goes through the Federal Reserve seamlessly, and it's clean both ways. So, obviously the motivation and the want of distributors, whether they use fintech or not, to go, EFT and 100% EFT is really grown in the last few years. So, the way that we support is again, we work with obviously the biggest chains to the smallest independent C stores, and it's all about efficiencies and safety, and it's really something that's very similar. Even back in the days of Heineken, guys, where, as long as I could provide value and made it simple for the distributor to execute, I was going to be successful. And it's really the same thing that we're doing now.
Nice. You mentioned safety. That's the first thing I think of too, going back to when we were, a distributor and using EFT, and just getting away from our drivers carrying a wad of cash in their pocket, because God forbid they use the safe that's provided in their truck, right? That just takes too much time. But
if it worked,
if they worked, yeah.
We have a key to it.
I had to break into a few of them.
Exactly.
But outside of carrying cash and the safety, what are some of the other benefits for a beer distributor for EFT?
Yeah. There's a lot. The cost savings, and you mentioned the safety. I was with, my first year with fintech was 2019, and my head was spinning. I didn't even know what I was doing. Bub was the kindest guy to me in the industry. He welcomed me like I was a veteran. But really, Mikey, it's the safety piece really ramped up during COVID, and that has held true now. So the safety piece, the contact, hands-free payment, certainly it reduces a lot of the labor costs, whether it's your admin in the office or your end-of-day reconciliation. It's a real clean cash flow. We handle all the bank accounts, so we handle all of the management of that. And again, for a distributor, it's about saving time. MBWA, as you know, Bud, did a study years ago that it's about 15 minutes on average that distributors waste waiting on checks or cash or whatever. And with any EFT or with fintech, they just go, they sign the invoice, and they move on. And yeah, the cash liability and the cash safety. I mean, there's obviously that's a serious thing right now with carrying cash around. So there's a lot of them, but we always, it's great. I've had some distributors call us the easy button, which is pretty flattering, to be honest. But yeah, there's a lot of things that helps out for distributors.
I like not having as a sale. If I think about the sales rep side, what I get excited about is that we get out of like the collection game. And there's this clip that always comes up in my mind. It's like, hey, we don't want to actually be out here collecting money.
I smell that's 80 grand. Now fork it over. I give you nothing. Absolutely. You understand? Nothing. I figured as much. Hey, Moose, Rocco, help the judge find his checkbook, will you?
Oh. Well, I will.
So no Moose and Rocco here. Like, and from a rep side, it's like, why do you want to spend all this time chasing down? And I see the world through the lens of, we get a series of yeses. You get 7 no's for every 1 yes you get. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to go out and have to go sell getting paid on a regular basis, like that's just a big trip over chronically over and over again. And how many states have, Eric, how many states have credit rules? Like there's a fair amount of rules. Like you can sell, yeah, credit terms. You can sell beer and wine and spirits on terms to retail.
Yeah, it's, I mean, off the top of my head, I would say 2/3 of the states are COD and probably a third are credit terms. And there's a couple states, Texas and Florida, that have mixed terms, if you will. So certain products are COD and some are wine and spirits are terms.
It's just a lot of complexity to manage.
It is, yeah, and but you're right. I mean, I know that, and we see this. You guys probably saw this more. It's more on premise where the reps are chasing the having to go back to the bar and having to chase down and find the right people. And I know it happens off premise as well, but again, it's just that gift that keeps on giving. I think in terms of efficiencies and having time. And not waiting and walking that retailer over to the cooler or walking the retailer around the store to find a display location. I mean, it's something that just helps everybody.
Now, if you were going to go in and put yourself in somebody's shoes around a sales rep side and think about how they're going to get in front of a retailer and talk to the benefits of EFT from the retailer, like, what are your thoughts there? My kind of jumping off point has always been, why do you want to be chained to the counter? Mm-hmm. You're always there writing a check, or the retailer is always there writing a check. Why do you want to be chained to the counter or leaving a blank check behind for a staff to fill it out or something else?
Yep.
I think there's a big opportunity there, kind of talk about retailer benefits with this audience.
There is, and what we found, guys, is it's all about the training. It's no different than any other process or system that you want to embed within your organization. It's about training, which we do with distributors. We've done hundreds of them over the years, mostly virtual, some on site. But for the distributor drivers or reps, it's really, the back office people understand it. The admin people understand the benefits, but the reps and drivers, they're out there moving product. So once we get them trained up a little bit, and it's really being able to have that conversation to overcome the objections. And you're right. The common retailer objections are, I like to write checks. I want to have control. Who's this fintech we're going to, that you want me to process through? But I think when they're able to ask some simple questions like, and especially if they have a good relationship with them, hey, sir, how many of your personal home bills do you write checks for these days? And I've been in market with reps, and you see this aha moment where they understand, wait a minute, this can actually help me speed up deliveries. This can help me be more secure, stay in compliance. And Ben, Bud, you mentioned the checks. There's nothing less secure than a check.
Exactly.
It has all of your information on it. And as much as the drivers don't want to do this, if a check falls into the dashboard or the seat cushion, or God forbid, it's a pre-signed blank check. I have seen that before. Come on. So, but it's getting over that hurdle. We know that the pool of retailers right now are primarily the independent small format on and off. And, they're old school, but there's a lot more Bud and Mikey's coming up in the world of, that next gen, the more sophisticated, savvy businessmen that respond to it immediately. So it's kind of a balance of who you're talking to. But yeah, the reps just need to be trained up a little bit and understand. One of the big things is we don't take title of money. These retailers think there's just this big fintech bank that just we're rolling in cash. It's seamless. We don't touch it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it brought back some horror stories talking about lost checks and chasing checks back and blank checks at the counter. Because all that hits home for us for sure. I remember my first couple days out as a relief rep. I was pretty young, hitting the streets on the truck, and first account counts out all cash to me right in front of everybody on the counter. Now I have to put this in my pocket, walk to the truck, and then I have the stack of checks too at the end of the day that I'm trying to keep track of and in order. And then fast forward when I was our operations manager, and then we had drivers coming in, they've lost checks, they have no idea where they're at. And you have to call the retailer, hey, can you write me another check and void that one? Just an absolute nightmare. And we were with fintech, we were EFT for quite a while before the state made it mandatory. So state of Michigan basically said that, everybody had to move to some sort of EFT and no more cash on delivery. So talking about that, are there other states that are, lining up with that? And what are some of the other legal and regulatory considerations behind EFT right now?
Yeah, though there's a lot. And I have to give a plug, but Wendy, but Wendy Turk's my VP of Regulatory Affairs, and she is
Wendy.
She is all over this stuff all the time. But yeah, when we got a little wind late 2022 that Michigan was talking about going 100% EFT, of course my first thought was that'd be great, but can that really happen? And as you guys know, it did. And the piece was it was the state, obviously a control state in Michigan, so the spirits were already doing 100% EFT, if I'm not mistaken, Bud. And yeah, okay. And then I know the other distributors drove it, but the thing is we had 90 days to do this. It was insane, and it bled a little into April and May, as we know, with the seasonal accounts. But no, it just we were thankfully we had really good relationships with the distributors up there, and we added some resources and pulled it off. But throughout 2023 and throughout this year, when we go to the state wholesaler meetings or we talk to people, we always bring up, the fact, that Michigan did it. And so that's really the shining star example. And breaking news here, guys. So this is breaking news. We love Harry. This isn't on Fox News. This isn't on your evening news.
Oh boy.
California, of all states, has a bill 2911 where they're going 100% EFT. It just passed the Senate. Literally, I think yesterday or the day before, 38 zip. So all we need is Governor Newsom, no editorial here, just sign the bill.
This is not a political podcast.
I'm focused on EFT, guys. Sign the bill, Gavin. I'm going to get a T-shirt. Sign the bill, Gavin. And if that happens, which it could be the end of the month or it could be a few weeks, it's supposed to be the 31st, EFT will be 100% in California starting January 1st, 2026. But distributors, we have already been talking to distributors, and they want to get this thing going now because you all know how difficult it is. So breaking news, knock on wood, sign the bill, Gavin. California is the next one. And I can tell you there are other states paying attention. So it's really a movement, if you will.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. And it's a modernization of our business, exactly what you guys have been doing for years. So there you go.
I think that's a good jumping off point to kind of peel apart what we did in Michigan and kind of more behind the scenes of what happened. Because for the owners that are listening to this, there's a lot of legislative activity that goes into building one of these bills or working with the regulatory agency in the state to make a rule to do this. So in Michigan, it's administrative order. In California, it's an actual bill. But at the end of the day, how Michigan happened was we're state-based ADAs. So the liquor control actually runs the distribution business for the liquor business. And what they did was, their appointed ADAs, so that's their distribution agents is what it is, came to them and said, hey, we're having a real big challenge. They get paid a delivery fee like a logistics company. And they were saying, hey, we got a challenge. We're spending more and more time collecting cash and checks, and it's just becoming cumbersome from a service standpoint. One of the things that we think that would save us a lot of money and a lot of effort on our staff's point and would kind of subside a discussion around a price raise or looking for a price increase on our service fees, because those are negotiated between the ADAs and the state, would be moving to 100% EFT. And these are things that we at Atlas and also other beer distributors actually asked, can we require a payment processor like fintech or anyone EFT side to force retailers to move in that direction? We were always told no. And then overnight, the state did it on their own. And it was really overnight. So then at Michigan Beer and Wine, our legislative operation in Michigan and our advocates in Lansing, they became, more in tune with do we want to talk about this as a board? Do we want to discuss this? I was on the board at the time when we started talking about this. And at the end of the day, we went back to the administration, and why MLCC wanted to do this so fast. We kind of did almost too good of a job selling the safety and the concerns and the focus around it. Because for me, it's always been we're just waiting for somebody to get shot, and it has actually happened. And there are wholesalers in the country that have went independently on their own 100% EFT because somebody's paid that price. And I don't know why we're continuing to just kind of fuss around this when that risk is out there. It's just not worth the risk to me. And that was one of the things that really forced everybody's, hand in the discussion. We talked with the MLCC about it. And because we had made it across the hurdle with all the liquor accounts, which is basically, an overwhelming amount of the accounts anyways, that allowed us to move so fast and move into the process directly as well with fintech at Atlas and then with other payment processors for other wholesalers too. So you have, as a wholesaler, more power in this discussion with your administrative bodies, with your legislators, in talking through this. And with all the value that a retailer gets out of a relationship with fintech, which we'll brush on lightly today, there is a lot of value that they get. So it's not a zero-sum game where only the wholesaler network wins or only the distribution network wins. The retailer wins ultimately at the end of the day too.
Yep. In fact, some of the other states that we've talked to over the last year, the first reaction is, oh, you're just bullying these retailers. You're just going to bully them into this, and it's going to cause, you never want to use the word force. And so you're going to force them to do this. And that's where, again, with the help of Wendy, we've really been able to flip the table on that. And no, actually, this is a safety issue for retailers as well. And not only a safety, but a security and a clean way to move money. And again, most of the time they don't even understand. By the way, you get how is that getting credits back? That's kind of a pain, isn't it? That's seamless too, both ways. So, and you're right. I think that what we've seen, and I know, again, talking to a lot of the large California and small California distributors, they have already started, and the initial response already from most retailers is actually positive. You're going to have a percentage. You're definitely going to have a percentage that are going to push back. But I think you laid it out well, Bud. It was really, okay, wait, these guys are doing it. You guys had a grassroots. You pitched it, and you're right. Some distributors have paid the price, and it's tragic to think about that. All the cash that's going on out. It's some cities. I still can't believe it's happening, but it is.
Yeah, I remember when the state regulation came down, and we had, like you said, 90 days to make some quick moves, and we had a good handful of accounts and customers that were totally old school. They would write their order down on a piece of paper. They were cash only. Probably didn't even have a bank account. definitely 50% of the income only made it into the bank account if they did, and that was our biggest concern of, all right, how do we have this talk with, 78-year-old Joe who's been running his bar since, whenever, to move to this direction. And that was a fear and a hurdle that we had to get over initially. But afterwards, and then going back and talking with some of those retail owners and stuff a few months in, they really liked it, because then they didn't have to be there to sign a check. They didn't have to be there to write out their, or count out their cash, or trust their bartenders or whoever may be there. But, one of the hang up, and you touched on it briefly, but safety, I mean, now you have 78-year-old Joe bar owner giving up his bank account and everything else, routing number. So you want to touch on some of the safety and maybe some of the concerns that retailers might have for jumping in?
Well, the biggest thing we hear from distributors is objections is that, believe it or not, I like to write checks. I want to be in control. It's working fine for me now. I don't need this. It's, and the cash, we don't even really go there, but guys, that's really it. I think they also see that, deliveries do happen quicker, especially if you're an independent C-store, you have trucks in your parking lot and you're trying to get in and out. There's a lot of things that go with that. So yeah, I think for the, and by the way, for the smaller retailers, Bud, as you know, and Mikey, we have a service for these independent retailers where the service is actually no cost to the retailer, and they can actually the benefit is they can actually process through fintech for free. Let's say that Eric's Pub has 8 alcohol distributors that I buy from. Ultimately, all 8 distributors use fintech. So that's another benefit to the retailer, that they can process all if they want. Now, we're still working on getting that retailer to accept all the relationships and understand that they can do that. But that's another benefit. And again, some of the other in-house solutions, some of the RAS accounting system, I get it, those are viable too. The problem is, you look at a lot of the distributors trying to get e-commerce up and running, and trying to get ordering platforms up and running, and trying to modernize things. The retailer doesn't want to go into 5 different portals to pay, for example. Now with fintech, we do have a brand new retailer experience where even for our free customers, they get a free trial for all the bells and whistles. But it's to me, it's more about the fact that they can pay really at no charge, unless they want all the bells and whistles. They can pay for all their distributors, and that's a big benefit.
What are some of those bells and whistles that a retailer gets?
So we just kicked off, again, it's a new retail experience. So in the past, Bud, when distributors would have a retailer enroll in what we call the DEFT, it was an old enrollment form, and they would basically just come on. They would provide the bank account information to normally the distributors, or sometimes us, get set up. They're all good. Now they land in a new retail experience. So there's all kinds of invoice summaries. There's certain data on their purchase habits. There's information on, I'm trying to think, all kinds of reporting that they can do about, maybe their top 10 volume. And, again, they go in for, I think it's a 45-day trial now. If they like it, they can upgrade. If they don't, they just go back to the other. But they'll, the whole communication and getting the eyeballs into the portal is a challenge for everybody. And we've had pretty good success with that. And, we have to be careful because, most of when my team works with the distributors, if there's a chain that's not on fintech, sure, we have a national account team. We'll partner with the distributor and see if we can work on that. But primarily, it's all the independent small format accounts.
Yeah. How many do you have now in total? What's the network look like? I mean, it's hundreds. Is it millions yet? I know it's hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. So depending on who you talk to, it's almost like Jen at Draftline. Depending on who you talk to, there's about 650,000.
Nobody can tell me I'm wrong. Often wrong, right. Never in doubt, Eric.
Thank you. You're right. My bad. It fluctuates. We have around 230,000 retailers on fintech. But I mentioned the relationship piece a minute ago. So, the number of distributors with each retailer. We just passed over 1 million relationships across the country. So there's still a lot of opportunity out there. The difference for us is, we've had a lot of success with obviously the chains years ago, the big chains, but now it's these independents, and we've grown. Not to throw out numbers, but I think the first year I was here, we added like 36,000 relationships, DEFT relationships. Last year we added 130,000. Wow. So it's kind of a movement. It's happening. It's just, have we armed the distributors and the reps and drivers and everybody else the ability to make it happen?
So Eric, if I guess from a best practice standpoint, if I'm a distributor and I'm looking to push this EFT on more of my customers, get more people signed up, or maybe even make it mandatory for all of my accounts and customers to be on EFT, looking at some of the best practices and maybe some of the other ways distributors went about it, what would be your input on that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I think education is first. Training and making sure they understand throughout the organization the benefits of EFT and how that works. And then for us, one of the things that we've done the last few years is we work with distributors, as an example, with the customer list. So the distributor will provide their customer list to us. We basically bump it up against our system, and we can identify instantly how many retailers are using fintech in their market or with their competitor, but not them, going back to the relationship piece. And we know this is sacred information, and we treat it as such. But essentially, we bump that up against. That's one thing. I mentioned the training. We do have a new Evite app, which is really cool, where either admin people or feet on the street can send electronically a email or text invitation to enroll in fintech. So that's a tool we have. And believe it or not, we one of the other best practices, distributors want to do incentives. So distributors, obviously there's a transaction fee for distributors for invoices, but distributors at the same time, they want to pay $20, $30 for every additional retailer that they can get onto fintech. And we co-op that with them. So everybody has a little skin in the game, but really it kind of starts with the customer list, Mikey, and the training. I think when you educate them and arm them with the tools to overcome the objections, you're halfway there, more than halfway there.
And Eric, when we look out into the future, are we seeing a Bitcoin, a fintech coin? Are we looking at credit card processing? Or are we staying on the tried and true rails of, EFT and what you built right here? Just more of like a vision for your future with all the financial enhancements that have happened in the last 20 years. And then, with Bitcoin and your cryptocurrency and credit cards and where they've gone and where we're going as on the consumer side there, I think there's a lot of opportunity to just at least briefly talk about that.
Right. Yeah. And not to go Jim Cramer here, because, I'm not an expert on Bitcoin, but I don't see that happening in the near future. You mentioned credit cards. We actually looked at credit cards a couple of years ago, and the use of credit cards from distributor at that time was very, very small. And I think it still is. I do see the evolution. We're going to continue to focus on our core business, which is payments. However, one of the other things that's moving in that direction that we are piloting right now with some mid-market chains is processing all of their general commerce invoices. And so while the retailer, they do alcohol payments with fintech, we're piloting now where we can do all of their invoices for their ice vendor and their soda vendor and everything else. So that's something that's coming too as well. That just adds even more and more benefits, because you can imagine how those invoices come in. And, I know I've seen a couple examples of I don't know if it was a Frito-Lay invoice or what it was, but it was literally like 25 pages and they have to manually input that. So I do think that's coming. And outside of that, the visionary Bitcoin or credit cards, I don't see that happening. What I do see, to reiterate, is a movement of just more savvy, technical, smart operators that understand the benefit, and they just have to talk their dad or mom into it, and help them understand that, hey, Pops, Mom, this is something that can help us efficiency and we can make more money. I think that's what we're all trying to do.
It's exactly what we're trying to do. Make more money.
Yeah.
That's what we're here about the podcast. That's what we're doing with our work. That's what you're doing with your work too. So be more efficient, be more effective, and make more money doing it for sure.
Yep.
What is that behind you, Eric?
This?
Nope, the other side.
I think we should put a warning.
Golden tea.
No, this thing's.
Everybody listening to this podcast that can't see it. So if you're on Apple, you're not on Spotify, you're not on YouTube, I want to put the warning out. If you find yourself in a bar with Eric, do not play golden tea with him.
Well, I don't see the golden tea right now. But you can see it on you'll see it on the
podcast. A little bit. Yep.
Oh yeah.
I love it. If you move, you got to move the tea. You got to move the computer a little bit and let us see it.
There we go.
Like this.
Okay. Anybody has a golden tea in your basement, we do not play against.
No, you can throw that out there.
Score, Eric?
What's that?
What is your low score?
Well, Bud, I've played golden tea for 20 years, and my low score, I believe, is 58. But I've been beat a number of times scoring 58. So it keeps me out of trouble. It keeps me from, I don't have a betting app on my phone. I don't hunt or fish. I'm an audio video nerd. That's that's what I am.
I love it. How long did you say you've had the golden tea for 20 years?
This is a classic. This is a 2006 vintage golden tea complete with 26 courses. 15 years probably. My wife loves it. Trust me, she loves it. But when we entertain, guess who's always wanting to play golden tea?
Your wife.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. She's the one who probably beat you shooting 57. That sandbagger.
Well, I have a shuffleboard table too, 18-foot shuffleboard table that she beats me a lot.
That's awesome.
It's not cool.
That is awesome. Well, anyway. Eric, thanks for joining us today, my man. I appreciate the breaking news for the crew. That'll be out when you listen to it. That'll be fun to listen to, and then we'll catch up. Eric, you'll be we're on the doorstep. We're about a month away from MBWA out in San Diego. You'll be there too, right?
Absolutely. We'll be there in full.
Good stuff. We'll have to see if there's a golden tea bar nearby to
we'll probably find one.
See what happens. Yes.
No, guys, thanks a lot. I love what you're doing. I think your topics are so relevant, and if I'm a beer distributor in this day and age, I really think you guys are doing some good stuff. I really do.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Eric. You're the man. We'll talk soon.
All right, guys.
Cheers, everybody.
All right.
Cheers.